Hey everybody, welcome to Garden Time with Belle. It is an early mid-September morning here in my Zone 6 Missouri garden, and today it's all about taking you with me as I go into my raised bed garden and do some September harvesting. Some of you might know that I have been away from my garden for about 2.5 weeks. We took a magnificent vacation to London and Scotland. Got to explore the Morrison heritage, my side of the family in Scotland. It was just such a meaningful trip. I loved it. However, like many of you gardeners who love to travel, we love to travel, but man, when we're away that long, you're thinking about how's my garden doing? And so I can't wait to get in there, see how things are looking, do some harvesting, and do some end of the summer cleanup. So before we head into my raised bed garden and see what's growing, I'm going to invite everybody to please like and subscribe to my channel. If you're new to my channel, thank you for finding me. I happen to be a home gardener here in the state of Missouri. I garden in a Zone 6, which where I live means we get all 4 seasons. So I deal with a lot of Midwestern challenges: hot, humid summers, lots of pests, lots of fungal issues because of the moist environment. So a lot of you I know can probably relate to the same kind of gardening. I happen to be a certified master gardener here in the state of Missouri, but really I'm just a home gardener. I happen to live on 10 acres and have lots of different gardens, but I'm not gardening on a grand scale, and most of us out there aren't, and that's not really what I'm all about. I'm not going to be planting, 300 boxwoods in my garden. That's for other YouTube gardeners that I also happen to like to watch. This is really about reaching out to you all who are just typical home gardeners just like I am, and going on some adventures, learning from each other, getting some inspiration and ideas, looking at the successes and the challenges that all of us face in gardening. And anyways, I'm so glad you're here. So before we head into the garden, we're going to go into my greenhouse because I need to grab some supplies for today's harvest. We're going to head into the greenhouse and grab the supplies I'm going to need for the harvest in my raised bed garden. But I got out here early this morning. The sun is just now coming up and reflecting off the pond. Isn't that pretty? Isn't it crazy how this time of year, here we are mid-September, how quickly things change in terms of sunlight? Gosh, I'm an early bird, and so I'm waking up in the dark now, where it was light much earlier. Now it's getting light later, and of course it's getting dark earlier in the day, so our sunlight is dwindling. But anyhow, before we head in the greenhouse, check this out. So I just recently published a video, and you'll want to check that out, on how I swapped out my containers here in front of the greenhouse to fall beauties. I put in things like croton, some mums, some sedum, and of course some pansies. They are so cute. So I'll turn the camera around here and see if I can get it in here so you can see a close-up. Let me see here. Where am I? There we go. I just am so happy with how that turned out. Okay, let's head in the greenhouse. I don't know if you all can tell or not, but we got some rain. Do you see how my little steps are a little bit wet there? I am delighted because we are in a massive drought. So it must have showered overnight. I don't know how much we get. How much we got, we'll check the water gauge when we get into the raised bed garden. Okay, so just need to grab some things. So I'm going to need my basket, harvest basket, and I imagine that's going to get packed full. I might even need something else for all the veggies I'm expecting. And then we're going to need some buckets because, as you know, I grow a lot of flowers. So I'm sure we're going to cut some flowers. Here's some of my Velcros, my gloves. I think really, honestly, that's it. So we'll go out here and fill up a couple of buckets with water so that I can put some fresh flowers in there. so let's head into the raised bed garden, and I think I'll show you all first kind of what's growing, what's doing well. We'll talk a little bit about the season because I'm trying to make a lot of video and mental notes on how things did this year and how I might want to do things differently next year. So we'll talk about that. We'll look at what's growing and what I'm going to harvest. Then I'll harvest, and then I'll show you the bounty that I'm hoping I'm going to get out of my garden today. All right, I would say this is a success, this bed here. It's a 4 by 8 foot bed, and what you're seeing here is Celosia flamingo feather. This was a happy surprise. When it first came out in the early summer, the flowers were really faint, like they didn't have much color, but as the summer wore on, they really colored up beautifully. So let's take a look at my zinnias. I've talked about these quite a bit. This is a beautiful mix. This is called Alpenglow from Floret Seed. And I want to show you a couple of special things in here. Let's come in and, oh, good morning, spider. You see the spider resting right there? You do your job, spider. So this is looking a little past prime, isn't it? And that's because I actually have marked 3 of these flowers as do not pick, including this one right there. Do you see that orange ribbon? Because when I was gone on my wonderful trip, there's another one that I've marked, my sweet family came and took care of a lot of the gardening for me, and I did not want them to pick a particular couple of flowers that I'm going to let go to seed so that I can collect this beautiful seed for next year. So anyhow, that's why these look past prime. I'm going to let them get dry and crusty and harvest that seed because that seed is expensive. And I'll let you take a look at my dahlia bed. I can tell you that it took forever for them to bloom this year, and I know that's because dahlias love cooler weather, but I see a lot of you in the Midwest growing dahlias, and you do a fantastic job. I don't know what happened this year, except that these are all brand new varieties. I would say my favorite and most prolific is Mediterranean. Look at that. Oh, beautiful. Lilac Thyme. This is my biggest one. It did really well. This is, I think this is Tropical. Is that right? Yeah, Tropical has been really prolific. Look at that. And then let me swing around here. This is one of my favorites, but it hasn't been prolific at all. And this is Jowie Winnie. You see that? That's pretty, but again, it didn't produce much. Yeah, so this was Tropical. Here's another view of Tropical. Look at that. Woo! And I think my favorite in the whole bed, besides Mediterranean that I showed you that was the purple and white, is Peaches. Oh, Peaches has a little caterpillar in it. I don't know why that's in there, but yeah. So my dahlias were so-so this year. I'm gonna pull the tubers. I'll bring you guys along with me when I do that in October, and we'll see which ones that I want to save, which will for sure be Mediterranean. Oh, and which ones I might swap out with my friends. So I need to share with you, of course, as I have been all summer, my saddest, most disappointing bed. And it's really sad because tomatoes are my favorite vegetable. That's pretty much how I started my gardening journey, is growing tomatoes. And you can see this bed right here is my tomato bed. Struggle bus all summer long. Of course, my cherry tomatoes produce beautifully, as they always do, but my slicer tomatoes, I mean, I got next to no harvest this year. And I know why. And if you followed my channel, I've told you why I think that is. And I'm going to change that next year, so I'll have better success. So as we get a bit of a close-up look here, you're going to see some missing tomato plants. It's sort of hard to make it out this morning with all the cages and everything, but there's a couple of cages because I've already pulled some that just like, there were no tomatoes left, and so they're out. I've got a few San Marzanos left. I've got a few Harvest Moon left. Here's some of my, oh gosh, let's see, Sun Gold cherries. They did really well. And of course, Super Sweet 100s. What didn't do so well, let me see if I can just zoom in while I'm talking. My Cherokee Purple, which are my ultimate favorite heirloom tomato. They taste like the tomatoes of my childhood. Yeah, anyways, so take a look here. Can you see these branches? Like especially this one. Take a look at that. You see that? There's no foliage. And when your tomato or pepper plants look like that, you come out the next morning and they've been stripped of foliage. It's almost always in my neck of the woods because of tomato hornworms. They will just devour your plants, the foliage. And actually, if they're hungry enough, they'll even nibble on the fruit, which happened a lot. I tossed so many tomatoes into the pond. I'll show you here right behind me. So as I'm out here working, I'm grabbing them and in the pond they go. Okay, so what am I going to do differently next year? I am going to do crop rotation. Bad on me. You're supposed to rotate your tomato crops, pepper crops, eggplant crops, nightshade family kinds of veggies. You need to rotate them every 3 to 4 years, meaning you shouldn't be planting them in the same location, in the same soil year after year after year. You need to get them out and let that soil replenish. I just haven't been following my own advice, but next year, definitely we're going to get that grid map out of all my raised beds, and it's going to be much better because I'm going to rehab all this soil that's depleted, and I'm going to make sure I'm rotating my crops. Anybody recognize this beautiful prolific flower? These are Gomphrena, and this variety is called Carmine. Hot pink and lovely, makes great dried flowers. I am going to harvest the heck out of these and dry them for other kinds of crafts that I'll be doing this winter. Next year I'll grow Gomphrena for sure, but I think I'm going to grow a little bit of a softer variety. So if you all have Gomphrena that you grow, and I grew everything from seed, let me know what varieties you like, but I'm looking for a paler pink. This is a little bit too bam. So over here in my little archway bed, I've got some, oh gosh, hello, what kind of peppers? Shishito peppers. You know, they produced, they're okay. So I'm going to probably harvest those today. And right now I've got green beans that are desperate to get harvested. So you can imagine lots of green beans are going to be going in my basket. Now, the thing about green beans is you want to harvest them young. This is sort of, I mean, I'll harvest it, but the bigger they are, the less tender they are. And some even have some of that spotting. So those won't make it into the kitchen, but a lot of these will. There's some more shishito peppers here. And this is my pepper bed. Let me back the camera up a little bit. There we go. Prolific, great peppers this season, all kinds, from my hot serranos to beautiful Big Bertha. I showed her in a video early in the summer. She was ginormous. But you can see I've got basil in here, and you know, it's late in the year, and because we're so humid and hot, towards the end of the season, we get fungal issues. And this is fresh soil. We just put in these tall beds early in the season. So anyhow, but I've got lots of peppers in that bed. And then if we carefully swing around to the other side of the arch, you all should recognize what these are. So I've got cucumbers that I can harvest today. I've got chives down on either end. And remember, chives are a perennial, meaning they come back year after year. Oh, there's a bumble. Thank you, Bumble, for pollinating things. All right, let's take a look at this bed. So this bed is Ageratum. Never grew Ageratum before. Oh my gosh, look at it. I mean, so you can imagine with Mediterranean, that Dahlia I just showed you, these make a wonderful complement to purples and yellows. in arrangement. So yeah, I need to get after this. I packed them in, obviously, way too much. I mean, they're jam-packed. So note to self, I am definitely going to grow this again next year, but give them much more room because look here, down the center column here is rainbow chard, Swiss chard or Swiss chard. I always say it wrong. Sorry about that, everybody. All right, let's go up here to this little bit. I'll show you this one real quick. So this is my fall crop. It had loads of things in it early in the summer. Now it's got lettuce. I've been making lettuce. I've been making salads every night and cutting from the lettuce. I also have carrots. And carrots can go for a long, long time into cold weather in the fall. So I've got some carrots growing. I tried sowing some spinach. Yeah, that was a bust. I did use a technique this year. Those of you that follow my channel know. For my area of the country, when I do fall crops and sowing that seed in August, it's too hot for anything. So I had shade cloth up. It kept the soil moist. It kept everything shaded, and it did so well. So note to self, next year, I'm going to do a better job of trying to put in some fall crops for the garden. Last but not least, we're going to look at this pathetic plant. I love Mexican food. I don't know about you guys. And I was determined to grow some tomatillos this year. So this is my tomatillo plant. And I had run out of room actually in the raised beds when I decided to grow this plant. And so we said, well, let's just put it in a pot in the corner and run some drip irrigation over to it. And that's exactly what we did. But I don't know what I'm doing. And let me tell you, I'm going to turn the camera around so you can see no foliage, because right before we went on our huge vacation, I noticed some tomato hornworms on here, and you know, I'm not going to be asking my family to pick off all those tomato hornworms for me, and yeah, they devoured this plant. Oh, let me come in real close. Do you see there's tomatillos on the ground? Supposedly that's a sign that they're ripe when they start falling off, but look at the sad, sad little stems. I mean, there's barely any foliage. Oh, there's some foliage. There's barely any foliage left. I mean, the tomato hornworms went to town. Here's what I don't know. I don't know when you're really supposed to harvest these. I mean, supposedly I've read when the paper husks get, start to split. But I always thought that the fruit underneath this papery husk was supposed to be green, bright green. And look at the color of mine, everybody. Let me get it against the dirt so maybe the color will show it. It's the palest little green. I did read that sometimes they're more yellowish, so I'm going to go ahead and harvest a bunch of these today. I'm going to roast them, and I'm going to try to use them in salsa verde. So if you have experience growing tomatillos, please leave some comments for me. Okay, time to harvest the zinnias, the celosia, and some of my dahlias. And so I'm just going to set the camera up and get after it. But I do want to share a couple of things with you in terms of zinnias. You all may know this because zinnias are one of the best cut flowers to try to grow from seed. Honestly, if you've never grown a flower from seed, you need to grow zinnias. Foolproof, awesome, awesome plants. So really quick, to know whether it's time to harvest your zinnia, you want to take your hand and go down the stem about 8 inches, and you want to wiggle the stem back. And if that stays fairly upright and the flower doesn't flop, that means it is ready to harvest. Let's see if I can find one that might not be ready to harvest. No, most of these are. So, okay, so I'm going to get after cutting these, stripping the leaves off, sticking them in my bucket of water. And I'm not going to cut the 3 that I have the little orange ribbon around because they're going to stay on the stem until they get really dry and crusty. And I would say about another month. So it's mid-September for sure, by mid-October. And then they'll dry out nicely and I'll pull them apart and save that beautiful flora Alpenglow seed for my garden next year. I'm going to take after these dahlias. And let me just say, our trip to the UK, to London, and to Scotland, like, oh my gosh, they know how to grow dahlias. Everybody grows dahlias there. Dahlias do beautifully there because it's a relatively cool environment. It doesn't get hot and nasty and humid like it does in Missouri. So they are masterful at growing dahlias. And in fact, I'm going to try to put together a little video montage of all the gardens that we visited. We went to lots of castles and palaces and even private gardens. And I just was in awe of their dahlias. They were just so inspirational and jaw-dropping. So couple of things before I take after my dahlias. Trying to decide when to harvest them. And so I'm going to cut this one. And this is this beautiful Mediterranean. I always strip leaves, and you notice I was stripping leaves on the zinnias. You don't want to have to worry about the water keeping the leaves hydrated. You can leave a few leaves if you'd like, but let me bring this into you. So I'm gonna bring it into the camera, and I hope it's gonna show up. It's so pretty. It showered last night for a little bit, so everything is glowing with raindrops. So you wanna look at the back. I hope this is showing up for you all on the camera. So you don't want the back. You don't want the back to be brown. You want the petals to maybe start to curl back on some varieties. And so you want most of the petals open. So that's kind of the perfect stage in my book for harvesting this Mediterranean. So I'm going to look at what I've got here and go ahead and harvest these beauties. So one of my goals as a home gardener is not to grow too many of the same type of veggie. I'm not a homesteader. I am not going to be canning a bunch of stuff and packing it away in the pantry to get us through winter. That's just not my jam. I typically come out here in the morning, pull what I think I want to use for dinner that evening or give away to friends. And that's kind of how I approach it. However, when it comes to pepper plants, which I'll harvest today, I like to freeze those. In fact, I think I just used the last of the peppers that I harvested last summer and froze. I think I just used those up from the freezer about a month ago. So those are one thing that I grow in abundance that because they freeze so well. But anyhow, these are super pokey, and actually this one is bigger than I would like. It'll be fine, but it will have seeds, bigger seeds than I tend to like. So I like to harvest cucumbers when they're smaller, like this size. And Oh, that one just pulled off this size. Um, Cucumbers are a lot like zucchini. You know, you can come out today, it's this big, and you come back out here tomorrow and it's like triple the size. So yeah, and when it comes to harvesting cucumbers, you want to keep an eye on them because they grow so fast. All right, let's see what we've got in terms of peppers. While we were on vacation, I think I shared with you some of our sweet family members came, my son and daughter-in-law and my adopted daughter came over and took care of the garden, and including my neighbors. I really encouraged them when we were gone. Please, please come harvest. Take anything you want. The flowers, the veggies, the herbs. Like, I don't want to come back and have a bunch of things rotting on the vine. And they did that, which I was really grateful for. So I'm not sure what I'm going to find in here. I have a bunch of these snacking peppers. These are like the lunchbox variety. But to be honest, I like the orange ones. These, I don't know what I got. And these were actually nursery plants. Usually I grow from seed, my peppers. Um, they're just not good. Like, I don't think I'm even going to harvest these because I've tried them. They don't taste good. They're really, really tough. So I don't know what they sold me, but these are nice. So I'm just going to get in here and harvest what I think is ready to go, and peppers will be done. Okay, so here we go with tomatillos that I've never grown before. Honestly, we'll see what happens. So I'm going to check these on the ground. As they said, when they fall to the ground, that can be an indicator. Of course, that one's rotten. So I don't know. Oh, just see that one. Hello, I think that one's ready. Whoops. Get these in there. So here I am under my archway, under my arch of cucumbers and green beans. And one thing I wanted to mention is I actually started both of these crops later this year, and they've done fine. In fact, they've done better. Typically, if I start cucumbers or green beans early in the season, especially cucumbers, get the cucumber beetle. And so I read something that said, you know, if that's a big problem where you live, start them late because the cucumber beetles are kind of not as active and they're kind of done for the season later in the summer. And yeah, so I think that's good advice for me. So, okay. So yeah, got to get after these green beans. This is the Seychelles variety. Nice, long, tender, stringless, which is super important for fresh eating and cooking in the house. So I have quite a few green beans to harvest. So let's get after it. So here I am at my sad little tomato bed, and I'm really not sure how many I'm going to harvest because there's not that many ripe. And I have been actually coming out here and harvesting some of them. But one of the things that's sort of a new trend, it's actually new to me, is people harvesting, especially your bigger tomatoes, your slicers, at what they call the breaker stage. And so I'm going to do that. So let me pull this German Johnson out. So do you see how this tomato is barely ripe? So just when it starts to barely color up, especially on the bottom, because that's where it will color first before it gets to the shoulders, they say go ahead and harvest it, bring it in, and it will continue to ripen inside your house and it will not lose its flavor. I've got a couple of Cherokee Purple, my all-time favorite variety of heirloom tomatoes. And while they feel pretty solid, they are starting to have that blush. So I'm going to go ahead and try that method. One of the reasons why this works so well, people that like to do this, is because it will get them off the vine before anything can attack them, birds, squirrels, before you have big fluctuations maybe in rain where they'll crack or split. So that's one of the reasons why people seem to like to do that. I've got a few San Marzano plum style over here. I've just got a couple of those. I'm going to go ahead and harvest those. I could harvest at the breaker stage also. Let me show you what would be considered, I guess, the breaker stage. Let me show you the difference. I'll bring it in close again. So, of course, you can see these are more ripe. This is showing some blush, so that would be considered the breaker stage. All right, let me grab a few of these little cherry tomatoes. Cherry tomatoes, you cannot go wrong. They are super prolific. They just pump out deliciousness all summer long. And as I mentioned earlier, I grow, the super sweet 100s, have for years and years and years. And this year, my first time growing sun gold, which are the golden ones. I love those too. So I will for sure grow these two varieties next year in my garden, and they will not be grown in this bed. They're going to be grown in a new bed with fresh, healthy soil to hopefully get a better production than I did this year. Well, that's going to do it for today's September harvest. I am pretty pleased with what I was able to pull out of my raised bed garden. I think the winner are the green beans. Of course, in here, I've got some cucumbers, the tomatillos, which I'm still not really sold on. We'll see. I'll let you know. I'm going to try to turn this into something decent to eat. A variety of peppers. I picked some of those tomatoes at the breaker stage that we talked about. Yeah, and just a few little strawberries, which probably won't even make it to the house because I'm going to probably snack on those. And of course, my beloved cut flowers, my dahlias and zinnias, Gomphrena, Celosia, and some Ageratum. I even managed to bring a little bee inside, a little pollinator inside of the greenhouse with me. So anyhow, thanks for hanging out with me today. It is mid-September. I know many of us in this part of the country are ready for fall. I don't know about you, but I am also going to miss coming out here and grabbing stuff right out of the garden to feed my family and to beautify the inside of the house. So anyhow, until next time, I wish everybody out there happy gardening.